Hello everybody, happy Saturday, welcome along to Garibaldi Reds. I'm Max Sayes, your host, and with you live for the next 20 minutes this morning to discuss Forest's performance last night against Spurs, as it now becomes 1 win in 13, 3 home defeats on the bounce, 2 away wins in 28, and a win ratio this season of 18%. Welcome along. That sounds fun, doesn't it? Joining me to discuss all of that and more is Forest fans Callum and Dan. Callum, let's start with you. Morning, mate. Thanks for coming on again. Good to see you. What did you make of the performance last night? Because I don't think it was too bad, but it was just same old Forest with silly errors, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was still obviously an improvement on Fulham, and it was kind of similar to the Wolves' performance in terms of tenacity. It was just lacking a bit of quality, wasn't it? Almost everywhere. I think that. I don't know. There's some good opportunities, but there's just no one to finish them off. And when your keeper's doing what he did for the second goal, there's no real way back into it, even against 10 men. It just seems like we're lacking a lot everywhere. I think even though it's the second game that we've gone with an unchanged side, and it's obviously that side that Cooper's picked to kind of pull him out of a bad situation, the players he trusts. And they've played well both times. It's just not been enough, and we're desperate for a striker, aren't we? It just doesn't feel like we're ever going to score, even against 10 men. I said last night we've played against 10 men 4 times this season, and we've only scored a penalty. We haven't scored from open play. So it was an improvement, but with the stats you've just pulled out there, it's not good enough at the moment still, even though it was a good performance against a good Spurs team. I say good, it was an okay performance. Maybe you'd say that maybe another lesser team we might have scored or beat, but I don't know. And who's lesser? We come up against Bournemouth next, and you'd probably hope for a win there at home, but they're on fire. So I don't really know where the next goal and next point's going to come from, to be honest.
Yeah, Bournemouth are the most informed team currently in the Premier League, so that'll be fun next week. We are live as well on YouTube and Facebook, Garibaldi Red and Nottingham Forest News. So if you want to get your comments to me, Callum, or Dan, then you're more than welcome to do so. Dan, you sit in the Lower Bridgeford at Forest. What did you make of it from your seat last night? Did you think it was just kind of same old Forest with the silly mistakes, or kind of like Callum just said, we actually played all right in stages of it as well?
Yeah, it's one of them. We were sort of the better team first half, but I've sat and watched Forest long enough to know, you sort of know what's coming, and lo and behold, as people started going down for the half-time pints and that Cross comes in, he's got a free header and we're 1-0 down, and all of a sudden all the hard work we've put in the first half is sort of undone straight away. A bit like the second half. The second half was no different. We were probably the better team. You sort of thought, we might get a goal. We certainly had chances, and then all of a sudden, the keeper just squares it to their player, and it's 2-0, and then it's game over. There's no way back. We're dying for a striker. I say it to everyone who wants to listen, but who's out there, and I don't think is it just a striker. I think we're probably a bit scared to. A few times last night, we were on the edge of the box, and you're thinking, just have a shot, and it's going back out wide again, and it's. But I think someone else told me we had 15 shots, so maybe we're just not making chance of the ones we're having, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem that Forest kind of, no matter what at the minute, it doesn't seem we don't seem to know where the next goal or even wins coming from. Callum, I mean, Spurs went down to 10 men in the 70th minute, but even then it just didn't look like Forest were going to score, did it? I think the game could have gone on probably for another hour and we just wouldn't have scored.
Yeah, it just doesn't. You can just tell sometimes, especially with Forest, kind of, even against City, it was like when they went down to 10 men, you kind of thought, well, okay, well, at least we're not going to get battered. Maybe the goal difference will probably be helped out more than us actually coming back into the game and scoring or equalising against Brighton. It felt like no matter what we would do, we didn't seem like we were going to score against 10 men. Yesterday, that chance, I think it was before the red card, but that chance fell to Willy Volley. And I remember it falling to him and seeing him have all the time in the world. And I said out loud, anyone but him, before he hit. And it was one of those moments where you're a fan and you go, oh, I've said that. But you hate it because your players just missed kind of an open opportunity. But I also thought, I said anyone but him. But I can't think of anyone but him that I really wanted it to fall to from that starting 11. Maybe Nico Williams, maybe. It looks like he can line up a shot from there. He did hit the post towards the end of the game from a similar position, but our right back being the player that I think of to have that opportunity isn't good. It's not. It doesn't seem like anyone kind of knows how to hit the back of the net. I mean, Toffolo scored the header the other week and then missed the same opportunity, probably an easy opportunity towards the end of the game against Wolves. Alanga is kind of, even if he does, he's born offside. He was offside. I think we were offside 5 times last night, and it was Alanga every single time. He loves the crossbar, and he does score the odd goal. I think he's our top goal scorer at the moment, but it's only 3 goals. So, who is it that you want it to fall to? Who is it that's going to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and do something? I think Gibbs White is that kind of player who can do that and create opportunities, but who's going to score them? And yeah, like you said, we could have played forever. It didn't seem like we were ever going to score. It didn't seem like, I mean, we were causing issues. I think we had more shots than Tottenham overall in the game, and we were definitely the better team in the first half, I would say, as well. But you just kind of feel like Alanga's going to get it on the wing, cut in and cross it. No one's going to get to it, or he's going to run it out of play or get a corner. We're not going to beat the first man from the corner. It's just, you could just see these patterns every single game. And yeah, I don't know. I think we need a striker in January, but we need someone similar to Awoniyi. We can't do a Chris Wood again or an Origi because they just don't suit the type of game that we play. Even when Chris Wood came on, I can't really remember him doing anything last night. And I wouldn't blame him too much because I just don't think he's that kind of striker that we need. So it's worrying. We need someone desperately, really, really quickly in January. It needs to be done early in January.
Yeah, we do. Lots of people kind of quick to blame the recruitment as well last night rather than on the pitch with the players or even Cooper. Ben says in the comments, Cooper out, totally out of his depth at this level and tactically inept. He's taken us as far as he can. 1 win in 13 and 2 away wins in 28. We cannot rely on our home form keeping us up this year. Jason says we are awful with no style of play. Peter says we need to get a striker in the January transfer window. Callum, what did you make of Alanga's performance? You touched on him there about him being offside a lot. He showed that fight, and I do think that the side was playing for Cooper. I still don't think that this is a side that's given up, but I think it's just that quality, and that's what's stopping Forest from getting those wins at the minute. In a way, is just the constant silly mistakes, isn't it?
Yeah, I think with Alanga, I wanted him to be more of a impact sub. I thought we had enough depth that it was going to get to a point where he was just coming off the bench and just frightening defenders. And when he takes them on, he has all of them on toast when he runs at them. But I realised quite quickly at the start of the season that he doesn't always take them on. He likes to cut back and he just kind of thinks, just go, just hit them. And then last night a lot when he was hitting them and running at them, he was running out of play or he was running out of ideas. He's a raw talent and he's a good player. He's a really good player. It just seems like he's kind of what we're depending on a little bit up there to do everything, and that kind of shows when we're starting him up front as a striker. He's not a striker. He's not a natural finisher. He struggles with the offside trap. We need him out on the wing. We need someone else with a almost better or similar out on the other wing with Gibbs White in the 10 and a proper striker, and we can't do that at the moment. We can't trust any of our strikers. We're having to play Gibbs White with Alanga. It's just not. It doesn't work going forwards, especially. I think the team itself playing that back five and having the 3 midfielders, I think that's to solidify everything up so that we don't concede as much. But we're really struggling up front, and like you say, even though there's a little bit of solidity in the back line, there's still mistakes and there's still letting the man go. And even at the start of the game, Son's opportunity at the start of the game, I thought, wow, we've started with 5 in defence again and they've just cut us open instantly. Players aren't tracking their man. And it was similar to the Wolves goal. They almost scored the exact goal that Wolves did. It was a good save from Turner, actually. But yeah, there's just individual mistakes and not enough going up front.
Yeah, Dan, I heard on Cooper's post-match interview last night with Colin Fray. Colin Fray asked him, when does kind of this blip become a crisis in a way? Do you think Forest are in a crisis at the minute? Do you think, look, 1 win in 13, 3 home defeats now on the bounce? Do you fear that Forest are going to be dragged into this relegation battle if we're not in it already?
I think we are in it already, aren't we? I think, when's as we've all said, when's the next point coming from? When's the next win coming from? everyone thinks next week's an easy game. I'd probably say it's probably the hardest out of the lot.
Yeah.
We're worse against the worser teams, if you want to call them that. I think he's. I said it last night. I think I even said it to yourself. I think this is probably. He's probably now, Cooper is probably at the most vulnerable he's probably ever been. Whether he likes to admit that or not, and I heard his press conference where he said he doesn't pay interest into that. I don't believe that. I think the last two lineups have shown that he knows he's in a bit of trouble. And I don't know how long. I really don't know how long he's got left now. I think a 3 or 4-0 last night, and I think he'd have gone. I think.
Yeah, still nothing from Forest. In fact, actually, their last social media post was the full-time post last night with the score on a nice graphic. Billy says in the comments, people keep saying we need to sign a striker. Obviously, we do, but what decent striker is going to join a team in a relegation battle, knowing that they will likely be on the bench when, of course, Taiwo's fit? Oriane says, up to Taiwo's injury, most people were behind Cooper. We need better recruitment to stay in the Premier League. No manager could pull results against top teams with the current lack of quality. Callum, I think that's the concerning thing, isn't it, really? Is not only do we not know where the next win's coming from, and of course Cooper's under pressure. He's kind of on this one game rolling basis, it seems, at the minute. But if Forest were to make the change, who would come in, and do you think a manager could really get a tune out of this current set of players, which on paper you could argue is a better squad than last season?
Yeah, that was my main point until I think after the Fulham game, I kind of thought who can get a tune out of them. I think we've got an unbalanced squad. We've not got enough depth in attack. We've not got a good goalkeeper. You can play as well as you want, but when your goalkeeper's doing that on multiple occasions in 3 different games, and we were trying to come back into it against Liverpool until he came flying out of his box, and the Brentford game he could have given away a penalty. And maybe got sent off, so we were probably lucky to get the point against Brentford. There's certain things that you can't control, but the stats don't lie. The 1 win in 13, we had Taiwo for a lot of those games, and I think we've got a better squad on paper. It's just I think we're leaving ourselves short in certain areas. I think the idea to get Sangare as the big blockbuster midfielder was absolutely right. It was what we were missing last season, but what we needed last season was Brennan Johnson, and we're missing that a little bit this season. As much as people don't want to admit that, and that we've bought Alanga in and everything like that, we are missing Brennan Johnson a little bit going forwards. We need any forward really. We haven't really got any, and when they come on, it's kind of Callum Hudson-Odoi who looks shot for confidence and doesn't really look that fit, and Alanga, which we've spoken about, is probably being played too much and being relied on too much. One, he's injured. Chris Wood is just not the kind of striker that we need, and Origi, I've no idea. I wouldn't mind us sending him back to Milan in January, to be honest. But that's what. Yeah, I think I don't know what a new manager comes in and does with that. It would have to be a very good manager. We speak about Cooper, and a lot of people kind of want you to get rid of that sentimentality, which is fair enough because you can't bring that into this league. But he did keep us up last season, and when you look at some of the sides that he had last season, some of the teams that he took to certain places, like people will slate Freuler and other players and Surridge and Koyate and bits like that, but we pulled some performances out of the bag with them last season with Steve Cooper. So he's not a terrible manager. He's just, I don't know. I understand both sides to it, and maybe a new manager comes in, freshens everything up, new tactics, everything like that, and it goes great. And that's what the owner would hope for. I think there's a reason we haven't got one yet, because I think he does want to get rid of him. I think he's wanted to get rid of him for a long time, and he's been waiting for an excuse. But I don't think we're that attracted at the moment to a manager. I don't think that Lopetegui would want to come to us personally. And I think each game that we lose, and the closer we get to the bottom 3, and the more you look at our squad, who's going to come to us? It's like Sheffield United had to bite the bullet and go for Chris Wilder, which makes sense because that's a sentimentality kind of manager for them, who they know what he's about. They've looked okay since he came back. We haven't really got that. We're going to go for Billy Davis. It's not going to happen. It's just we need an upgrade of a manager, and it's not necessarily out there. You just know that Steve Cooper would leave and go to Crystal Palace and just soar with them, and then we'd kind of get I don't know, and you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't want a Jesse Marsh sort of situation. People talk about Emery. Villa went to Gerrard first. You have to get it right the first time when you're in a relegation battle, when your squad's a little bit lopsided. And Marinakis doesn't have the track record of picking excellent managers. I think he's got the few that have been mentioned. I think they're good candidates. And if he's got one of them in the locker and he wants to get rid of Steve Cooper, then maybe that's the choice. But why hasn't he made that decision yet? So yeah.
Yeah, interesting points. Tom says in the comments, next 2 weeks will be massive in how our season goes. The manager situation needs sorting out, either with the owner is sticking with him or change now, as this game-by-game uncertainty is doing no one good. Sean also says, seem to recruit plenty of defenders and midfielders and looks like another one coming in January. Why are we not looking at wingers and the forward line? That's a very good point. Dan, do you think the recruitment's to blame more than Cooper? Speaking to someone outside the ground last night, and they said to me, well, you can't really blame Cooper and the players. You can blame the players more than Cooper, but this lies on the recruitment and kind of Ross Wilson and the signings that Forest have made so far.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, because who's making the signings? You would argue, if you look at our bomb squad at the minute, you'd argue Santos, Tavares, Sangare weren't Cooper's signings. They were done behind him. But then Chris Wood was one of his signings, and he's not. I don't think he had a touch last night. So it's all right saying, who's. And I think because we're a bit more invested in the teams than say someone said about Brighton last night, and about Brighton only make good signings. I says they probably don't. I says, but you only see the good signings because you're not invested into the club. Do you get what I mean with that? So like we see all the bad signings because we see them week in, week out. We're so invested in Forest, whereas other clubs probably do make bad signings, but we don't see it because we're not bothered about what they're up to. Are our signings good enough? Probably not. Would someone else get a tune out of him? Again, probably. You don't know. If Chris Wood was to leave in January, he could go anywhere and he'd probably score 10 goals. That's just how football works, isn't it? It really is. Yeah, he would go to Luton or back to Burnley or somewhere, and you could see him getting 10 goals. No problem. It's just one of them things in football. We seem to sign players that don't work for us, and then we'll move them on, and they'll go get a tune somewhere else. So yeah, it's sort of the signings probably aren't what we needed, but again, someone wanted them. We was after Sangare for over a year, so that's not something that's come out of nowhere. And now he can't even get on the bench. Never mind the team.
Yeah, and you could argue there as well, Dan. You mentioned there about kind of people not being invested into clubs and kind of seeing what they do on and off the pitch week in, week out. And that's the problem from an outsider point of view, isn't it? When people go, Forest maybe shouldn't get rid of Steve Cooper because of all he's done for the club and the sentiment value. But then in the same way, Dan, I'm sure you follow Forest home and away, and you see week in, week out, and one win in 13 really at the minute just simply isn't good enough, you could argue.
Yeah, well, in the last 2 years in the Prem, I missed Southampton away. I've only seen us win one away game in 2 years. I've seen us win none. Yeah, exactly. So, and I think now, whereas it was a bit different when Leeds beat us and we sort of thought he was going to go then. And then last year when Leicester beat us and he sort of thought he was going to go then. I think now, a lot more fans, not on the turn of him going, but on the turn of if he goes, then, you sort of remember, oh yeah, well he's done a good job, but sentiment you can't. Do you think Leicester when they got rid of Ranieri after they won the Premier League, or Pellegrini when Guardiola was available? He just won the Premier League. Guardiola come available, and Man City were like, oh cheers mate, well someone better's here now. No one thought any less of it. It's still going to be known as he got us in the Premier League and we were bottom and all that. But I think results come better. I'd have anyone in charge at the minute if it meant we started winning games. You know what I mean? It's not fun going to games anymore at the minute, and that's only going to get worse. And we're really, as a club, we're quick to turn really sour out of nowhere, and that's not happened yet. But I don't think it'll be long. You see loads. There was hardly anyone left in the ground last night at the final whistle. And that's only going to keep happening as we keep getting beat.
Yeah, Callum, I think I saw something on social media last night, and again, this was from an outsider's point of view, and he was like, I kind of can't see why the Forest fans are upset. All right, it's 1 win in 13, but then in the same way, you're still above the relegation zone. You've got Everton below us. But at what point do Forest actually start going, hang on a minute, we're in a real crisis now, and we really need to sort something?
Yeah, I mean, like, Everton are going to be above us. If they're playing today, I think it is, they've got Burnley, they're going to be above us very soon. And that's with a 10-point deduction. That's embarrassing. Burnley, if Burnley pull out a result against Everton, I think they come straight up as well. They're all breathing down our necks already. And each game that goes by, these teams below us, the whole kind of idea was, touch on what Dan said there as well, the recruitment. Last season, we couldn't blame the recruitment because they had to get so many players in. This was the season to kind of rectify the issues, get rid of the bad players, bring in the good players. That's what you can blame the recruitment for in a way. But they did look like good players on paper. Sangare is a good player. It's someone that I've been watching for a long time. I couldn't believe that we'd signed him. There's a podcast called Tifo Podcast. I think a lot of people might have heard of it, and they used to sing his praises all the time. And there was one guy on that podcast who absolutely loved him and was kind of surprised that he wasn't going to Liverpool and he was coming to Forest. So he's not a bad player. It's just that, like Dan said, it seems like we sign these players and they don't really fit our system. People are saying, let's get Adebayo from Luton. That was a big thing last week. He'd probably come and do nothing. That's just how it goes sometimes at Forest. And yeah, these teams below us, they're like I said before, Sheffield United bringing Chris Wilder back. It just seems that seems like a kind of coy decision. It seems quite right to do. It just seems like it's going to suit them. Burnley are the kind of team that I think are trying too hard to play football a little bit like we did last season, and they're not really learning the lesson. They might well learn the lesson. They're still on 8 points up to this point. Luton, that's the kind of team that do buy players to fit their system. Some of the players you can't believe that are in the Premier League, but they work and it suits that team, and they just seem to be, it's kind of like us last season, that fortress at home. It's not easy to go there. They've got a point against Liverpool. They pushed Arsenal to the end. They pushed City. They're going to be able to pick up points, and we're not picking up points, and it doesn't seem like we can pick up points anywhere. And it's scary. There's no reason that we don't fall into the bottom three, and there's not really any reason we don't find ourselves bottom very soon. If teams below us start picking up wins, I can't see where ours is coming from. And it is worrying. I don't think there's any teams above us that will get pulled into it. Bournemouth look absolutely fine now. Crystal Palace are struggling with injuries, but it's Crystal Palace. They'll probably end up mid-table. Wolves look really good now, and that's above us. I don't see us going above anyone at the moment. It's just looking over our shoulder again for an entire season. So it's fine looking at it from an outside point of view, saying, oh, it might just be 1 in 13. 1 in 13 is terrible, and 2 away wins since we've come up is terrible. It's bleak. Everything's looking quite worrying. I think I'm more worried now for relegation than I was last season, which is crazy because last season it was driving me mental every single week. Relegation was last year, and I was convinced it was going to happen at one point. And now I'm even more worried, and it doesn't feel like we should be like that after a transfer window.
Yeah, good point, Dan. Just kind of quickly then before we wrap up, what do you think Forest will do with Cooper, and do you think that maybe now is the time to make a change if there is time to make it?
I think he might get next week, and I think if we lose next week, he'll probably go. I don't think he'll get the window if we don't pick up a win. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's everyone's entitled to their opinion. But at the end of the day, we all want to see Forest winning football matches, and at the minute we're not doing that. So at some point, something has got to change. You can't sack all the players. You also can't bomb all the players out. Sangare is not going to sit in the bomb squad. 40 million, 50 million we paid for him. He's going to come back in the team at some point because he's not going to be sold in January. So at some point, he's going to come back in the team, whether it be with Cooper or out Cooper. We just got to start winning matches, and Marinakis has got to start seeing him. He's invested more money into the club than anyone ever in the history of Forest. And at some point he's going to want to see us getting something out of that money that he's putting in.
Yeah, Callum, just the same point really put across to you. Do you think now's the time to maybe make a change?
If any time, yeah, because the Bournemouth game next is what you want more than the games coming after that. I'm not too sure exactly what the fixture order is, but the games. I think we've got Newcastle and Man United coming up and bits like that. So you don't want to bring anyone into that. I think one big point as well on recruitment is, Dan said before, Chris Wood was a Steve Cooper signing. I think he wanted Andre Ayew last season. I think maybe the owner might want a manager for the January window that wants to put his player input in there so that he can kind of be on the same page as the manager. And I think maybe you might want a manager that will bring in better players and know of better players, because Chris Wood and Andre Ayew and players like that aren't going to pull us out of anything. So, potentially.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Dan, Callum, thank you very much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it both. Remember, we were back on Monday morning for our main episode on Garibaldi Red, where we'll reflect on the game in more detail and look ahead to Bournemouth, the game before Christmas for Forest. Keep up to date with us, Garibaldi Red _ on Twitter and Nottingham Forest News on Facebook. Thank you for all your comments and your likes. Remember to follow us across all platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube, and we will see you very soon. Thanks for your company this morning. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Bye-bye.